where telling the truth is far more terrifying than telling a lie. Tonight, 3 spine-chilling real-life horror tales are going to hit you right in the gut. A spooky house has the spirit of a malevolent woman in the attic, a roadway that claims that if you drive it once at night, your soul will be lost, a doll that is possessed by a spirit with a secret. The following horror stories will make you doubt whether what you are seeing is real or not. Ready to be scared? Give that subscribe button a nudge and join us in the dark. Thus, the Smith family lived in an immense house belonging to the Victorian period on the outskirts of a tiny town. The house had a story on its own. It was said that the house was haunted, but they usually ignored such marked talks. That is until such events began to occur at the house and its tenants, which is what this curious story is all about. It was on a winter evening when Mrs. Smith was packing up the Christmas trees and other ornaments in the attic. She assured that she had had the feeling of being followed, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. She dismissed it as just her mind playing tricks on her and went back to her work. But as she turned to go, she became conscious of a shadow that she sensed out of the corner of her eyes. The girl suddenly tensed and felt like her heart skipped a beat, but there was nobody. The Smiths then realized that something else was Lake's doing within the next couple of weeks, such as you'd see objects flying across rooms of their own accord. People would hear whispers when they are all alone at night. A reasonable man that Mr. Smith is, he is likely to attribute it all to inherent fate. But Emily, who was their daughter, was not convinced with the idea at all. Emily, having woken up one night and being unable to get back to sleep, decided to explore the attic. Taking a flashlight and a baseball bat that belonged to her father, she climbed the stairs that squeaked on every step. Thus, dust lay heavily in the air and an indefinable, slightly pungent odor of decomposition could be detected. She slowly stepped into the attic and was pointing the flashlight up and about. There was at first no sense of incongruity. Until one day she noticed something. There appeared to be a man standing in the far corner of the room in the darkness. It took this moment for the reality to hit Emily, and she gasped for air. Her eyes widened moments later, and the figure was gone. He walked up to me and grabbed my arm, unnerving me and forcing me to escape from the attic, stumbling down the steps. The girl told her parents what she had seen, but the parents did not take this seriously, supposing it was just a nightmare. But Emily knew that what she saw was reality, and was sufficiently practical to remember that the bride's trousseau should not be rucked up under the beds. However, Emily never fares well when she has to remain in the dark, and so, she started researching the history of the house. She learned that the man who owned the car before was a man named Samuel, who was said to have disappeared in the attic many years ago. Some said he was sacrificing some pigs, and that is when he disappeared into thin air. He continued to read, and the more Emily read, she was inclined to believe that Samuel's spirit was still in the house. The lady had no option but to challenge him. Hoping that none of them would appear, and that she would be lucky enough to see her past before she was killed or the place was burnt down, she went back to the attic one stormy night, this time with a candle and prayer in her hands. While lighting the candle, the lady experiences a high feeling of chilly scare in the room. Beams of light reflected on the silhouette, and in the corner of her eyes, she could hear people whispering. "Samuel, if you are here, come in the open," as she said, her voice cracking. This candle, which was burning for a while, immediately went off, thus leaving the room in a state of complete and utter darkness. Emily woke up from a sudden sound, and instantly she felt a hand on her shoulder. She screamed. The next thing she knew, she was on the landing at the foot of the attic stairs with Adeline, her parents, anxious. Emily stopped going up to the attic, and the mysterious events came to an end, but not without leaving her a voyeur. But she so well realized that Samuel's spirit was still there, and he was still alive, waiting for someone to dare to face him. Jake was a truck driver. He was used to the large customer outlets and the quiet evenings alone in his truck. However, a stretch that he would always try as much as avoid was a lonely highway that snaked through the forest. There was a story around that the road was haunted, but Jake, being a much more rational person, did not believe in ghosts. Namely, until one fine evening. That was the very night, cold and foggy, when Jake got into his car to drive along the road. He decided to get home and sleep, but the fog that had developed made the roads to be hard to recognize. One day, he was walking along a road when he came to a bend and saw a man standing in the middle of the road. The man stamped on the accelerator. His massive truck skidded to a halt. The figure didn't move. Jake stepped out of the truck, his heart racing as he approached the source. It was a woman. She was now wearing a white dress that looked as if it had been torn, and her eyes were empty, devoid of life. She gave him a deathly stare in return, and before he could say anything, she was gone like the wind. Jake blinked and rubbed his eyes. He thought he was hallucinating. He climbed into his pickup and drove on, but the woman re-emerged, this time right beside his vehicle. He swerved to avoid her and almost ended off the road. He realized that he had to get out of that sort of life as soon as he could manage it. When he started to increase the speed of the vehicle, the woman was suddenly spotted nearby, before standing in the middle of the truck's route. He tightened up and prepared for this, but she vanished just as he went through her with his truck. This made him stop over by the side of the road. He was muttering and shaking his hands. That's when he heard it, a faint sobbing coming from the woods, which the son must have followed his mother into while playing. He knew he could not and should not, but something drove him to do it. He took his torch and went where he could hear a noise. This led him to an old dilapidated house in the middle of the forest, far away from the town's main center. The crying became louder as he neared the house. He turned the handle, and the door swung open, then continued to make the most awful noise. It could be smelt that the air was filled with stench originating from mildew and rotting. He hunted the sound up the stairs, into a small room at the end of the hallway. Inside he sees a woman, the same one he saw on the road, and she is sitting on the floor and crying. The girl tore the blindfold off her eyes, turning to him with her lips quivering, and said, "A shelter." Jake could hardly respond before switching off the lights in the room. At once, he felt a hand clamping down on his shoulder, and with a start, he came face to face with what seemed to be a menacing figure. "I said leave or you will never go away," said the figure in a very low and threatening voice. Jake, panicking, had to get out of the house, running back to his pickup. No sooner than he left that cursed road behind him and stopped the car. To this date, he never uses the stretch of the highway again, and believes that the woman and the specter of a man are wandering there to this date, seeking the next soul to consume. Lily's passion was the antique doll collection. This is something that she enjoyed mostly because of the excellent work that was done on each of them, as well as appreciating the historical aspect of the item. Her cherished item was a porcelain doll she bought at a yard sale in the neighborhood. She was beautiful, spoke with well-glossed blue eyes, and wore a sheer white lace gown. But I felt that something was wrong with it, something that failed to impress Lily and made her just scratch her head. As soon as she brought the doll home, the string of odd incidents began. She would always hear people walking at night, and items would shift places on their own. In the beginning, she dismissed all that, thinking that it was only her mind playing tricks on her, but then she began to experience nightmares that involved the doll coming to life to murder her. One night, she wakes up and sees the doll sitting on her bed looking at her with its big scary doll eyes. She was sure that she did not place it there. She felt her heart thump and hastily took the doll and locked it inside a cabinet. However, the following morning it was again placed on her bed, only this time it had the most wicked look on its face. Lily was a desperate girl, and she did some research that was concerning the doll. This, she realized, had once belonged to a young girl named Emily, who died a very mysterious death. There were even stories that the spirit of Emily resided in this doll and could harm whoever picked the doll. Lily was set on getting rid of the cursed doll, so took it to a priest. He conducted an exorcism wanting the spirit out of the doll so that the young girl could be freed. But as he began to chant the prayers, the doll opened its eyes, and in a frightening demonic tone of voice it said, "You can't save her." The priest was levitated and slammed onto the wall, and the doll began to burn with fire. Lily gawked as the doll burnt, and its porcelain face was swollen and blackening. When he was finally through, there was only the cinders left. However, Lily felt free from the curse, but he continued to have nightmares. Something as simple as a greeting made her skin crawl. She was experiencing nightmares, in which she woke up in a cold sweat with Emily's voice in her ears. She understood the spirit was still with her, following her for what she did to its host. Even now, Lily listens to whispers at night, and Emily, she is certain, will not let anyone sleep until she receives her retribution. Such tales have to be told to remind people that some things are best left unbroken. If you have the guts to go in search of the supernatural, Saker, you might just get exactly what you are looking for.